Welcome back. We're going to go into April, and the story in the UK. Most people in the UK want out of the EU except London and Scotland. Scotland was no surprise recently, given that they didn't even vote for their own independence, which was a recent vote a year or so back. And we warned in this piece that the Scots have a healthy and sometimes not dislike of England and the English, and yet voted to stay part of it, which I found rather curious. As for London, most in that region, like New Yorkers and Parisians, are money-oriented people with little care for anything or anybody else. So I came up with a solution. A fairly simple solution, as we always do, is build a taller Hadrian's Wall to Scotland and let them stay in the EU. Build a wall around the M25 and let them stay in the EU. Create a separate government and treasury outside of the M25 and see how long they last. Problem solved. Common sense, you see. And talking about common sense, this next one has zero. In fact, I'll go further. She put out a video, The Court of Ages, done by the complete retard known as Cindy K. Courier, the smiling assassin. She has no court, has no authority, has no brain cells either, to be signing off the trust. She said she was signing over the trust to Jesper Elleman and the Kingdom of Manor. And neither will the trust funds be routed through the child trafficking on and off world group known as Swiss Indo either. You know, that was quite an embarrassment that the Kingdom of Manor and crew went to such lengths to be recognised of going through Cindy K. Courier. Oh dear. So we threw out an offer to Jesper and his crew, live on air validation of proof who has the codes and the ownership of the trust. Jesper ran away the last time from the offer. Will he do it again? Yes, he did. And it won't be the last time we hear from the smiling clown known as Cindy K. Courier either. The Pentagon and some Secret Service launched an all-out assault on Kim on the first Friday in April, and General Dunford signed an order to track a Kim. And the reason I said that is that there's a number of them running round claiming to be the original and causing mayhem, all created out of Langley. And General Dunford ordered a search and rescue squad of 12 to snatch Kim out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Now, the basis of their argument was citing that Kim was a terrorist. And then she was planning on crashing the financial system of America. It's funny how the very people who are terrorists and were planning to crash and burn America are accusing the ones of trying to save it, when they're the ones that are doing it. A very common theme, that accusing others of doing what the accusers are doing did not relent during this year, did he? See copy and paste Voyers Group for evidence of that, and Democrats. We had a statement on the United States will not tolerate hostile foreign military powers meddling with the Western Hemisphere's shared goals of democracy, security, and the rule of law. The Venezuelan military must stand with the people of Venezuela, said John Bolton. 1. The US is not a democracy, Mr. Bolton. 2. The US is a hostile foreign military, but it's not owned by the American people. 3, pot me kettle. 4, what you are saying is only the Rothschilds-led US military are allowed to interfere in other countries, which they have done. 60 plus elections and 81 countries invaded by the US, which is not American military, since World War II. Not one of which has attacked America. And we left you with this message. TikTok, Mr. Bolton. Then we did an expose on AOC, Alexander Cortez. And so much so is that she publicly responded to this piece the following morning in a news item. And we said, how about you tell the public of why you are pushing the Green Deal? Because the deal would bring in millions or billions of dollars for the Pelosi's. That's what the Green Deal's all about. Now, she identified as being Catholic and described her faith and its impact on her life and campaign for criminal justice reform in an article in America, the magazine of the Jesuit Order of the United States. Ocasio-Cortez said that she has Sephardic Jewish ancestry, although she does not practice the faith. Yet again, born in New York with Jewish ancestry. And I ask people, I hope you are beginning to see the depth of this problem. The problem is not they are Jewish per se. The fact that so many of these people are running this country, and badly I might add, and how they just spring to prominent positions with little to no background, bearing in mind that Cortez is just 29 years of age and was waiting on tables and working as a bartender just 2 years prior. Oops. And then suddenly is thrust into the middle of a political circle way beyond normal guidelines. It doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense if there was some collusion to get her there. You see, it was Cortez cited collusion, the Russian type, when she has been the beneficiary of collusion. Cortez was installed by a vote of the DNC committee. Why? Because she could speak, as Pelosi is incapable of speaking coherently despite being labelled as Speaker of the House. That House appears to be of a lunatic asylum rather than political. And Miss Cortez refuted claims the following day in a news press conference. Oh my. Then we did ingredients of vaccines, and I asked people, or told people, to beware, as it's time for my favourite MeWe GIF again. Vero cells, which are monkey or pig related. MRC5, which is male human cells from aborted babies. WI38, female human cells from aborted babies. Fetal bovine serum, which is blood harvested from baby cows. MSG, known neurotoxin. Formaldehyde, known carcinogen. Aluminum, known as neurotoxin. Acetone, which is a nail polish remover. Polysorbate 80, carcinogen, also known to stunt brain development, hence autism. Embryo cell culture, which is from baby chickens, not blue chickens. MDCK, which are dog kidney cells, and human albumin, which is GMO human DNA inserted into yeast. You can go ahead and post my MeWe GIF again. That's the list of ingredients in vaccines. But they're safe, you know. Yeah, right. Then we did a piece, Did You Know? Back in 1979, the term person was redefined as a variety of entities other than human beings. Did you know the US Treasury was officially closed in 1921 and transferred all their duties over to the Federal Reserve banks? Did you know under the Constitution, the original one, only gold and silver are declared as money? Currency is not money. Redeemable currency must promise to pay in gold or silver coins. Did you know the US government or Congress were not authorized by the Constitution to issue currency, only coin? Did you know the Federal Reserve notes are essentially unsigned checks designed for the sole purpose of creating debt? Whenever there's an increase in supply of money called quantitative easing, it must be backed by an asset like gold or silver. If not, it creates inflation. What is inflation? A secret form of tax. The Federal Reserve has unlimited access to print out all currencies, which is substitute money, with their only cost is the printing paper and the ink. Then they lend out the dollar bill to governments at a cost of 10 cents per dollar. And essentially they are promissory notes, but promissory notes to pay the Fed debt only, except there is no debt. It's just a piece of paper. Did you know you can only pay off a debt by using gold, silver, barter or commodity? With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. Discharge is a way of paying off debt via bankruptcy, remember. The debt is discharged, but they still own the asset. Oops. Like houses, cars, etc. So you've discharged your debt, not paid off your debt. You cannot pay off a debt with a currency system, only gold and silver coins. This is why when you get the title deed to your home, it tells you clear as day that you are the tenant, not the owner, so you're renting the property. Federal Reserve demanded that interest payments must be paid in gold. Now you know why Fort Knox is empty. So the 10 cents on every dollar they were forcing the government to borrow, because they collected all the tax money and kept it to themselves. All the interest payments had to be paid in gold. Real assets for fake pieces of paper, which that gold then was transferred to Marduk and the trust. But there is no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act to repay the principal, because technically there was no principal is why. Did you know most Americans held free and clear alloidal titles until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913? They pledged all the property within America to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, to which the trustees there in the Federal Reserve then held the stock title. And because you can only discharge the debt with currency, they hold the lien of the debt until payable by gold and silver, and subsequently claim the title to your assets and then can leverage against it. 9-1. The US citizen, known as tenant, or franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via their birth certificate. Then in 1933, the Fed pledged all of the present and future properties, assets and labour of their now called subjects. Subject means a person under control or dominion of another, to render submissive or a dependent or bind under the 14th Amendment, US citizen to the Federal Reserve. In return, the Federal Reserve agreed to extend the US corporation, not US government, to all the credit, currency which is substitute money, it needed. So they'll give it bits of paper for all the assets. Monopoly money. In return, the US corporation, operating as a government, had to assign over all collateral and securities to the Fed as a condition of the loans. Issue was the Federal Reserve never had any assets for their support or to print the currency and back it. So where did their assets come from? Well, they assigned the private property of their subjects, you, or slaves is a better term, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. Why is it unpayable? Because you need gold and silver to pay off the debt is why. Hence, the gold and silver heist from the American public announced the same year in 1933 when it became illegal to own gold and silver and so preventing the public paying off their debt. I can hear the Americans steaming out of ears and gulping a bit and saying a plethora of uncouth words at the moment, and I'd like to share that, but perhaps best not. They also pledged unincorporated federal territories, now known as national parks, your birth certificates and non-profit organisations as collateral against the federal debt. Essentially, the Federal Reserve declared themselves as a sovereign, and we are renting our homes, not buying them. And that is why after you've discharged your mortgage, you get the title. It says on it you are a tenant. But you can only pay your debt off in gold and silver, not currency. More word magic. Propaganda. Pro-pagan da means for pagan skin. And I also asked, is it a coincidence the word religion, I Reg Lion, I King Lion, lion is the worship of the cat and the Catholics and Amun Ra. That would become a lot clearer, much to the cat lovers' chagrin in From Russia With Love 3. An attempt to refloat all the banks was made in April by Kim and the Trust to try and end an impasse between the new and old system. Promises were made and guaranteed, and it all went ahead. Then came the stalling part. Initially because the RV was on the Tuesday, then when that failed again, more delays and distractions of where their input and promises had to be kept. On the Wednesday, Kim pulled all of the money back into the trust. Yet again, Kim did all the work for them in the setup, the contracts and the delivery of the funds. And yet again, they blocked the people's money aspect. HSBC London tried to leverage historical bonds, or is it hysterical bonds, as Kim says, for $10 trillion US. Unfortunately, it was rejected based on no allocation. It's that no allocation of numbers again. Only Kim can allocate numbers for circulation of new money. And so it was rejected. In the next move, several agencies and organizations were notified of their inability to protect the financial system of the United States of America, so they were removed entirely from seeing into the financial system and also from messing about or a key point of being allowed to maintain any set of books. The gist behind that was there were several agencies all monitoring the financial system and the US dollar. You only need one. There was loads of them all doing the same job. The savings in government spending, you got to remember, the highest employer in the world is the US government. There's a reason for that. And most of them are doing duplicate jobs. In other words, hardly any of them are doing any work. And we're paying for that. In that ridiculously high budget. By my estimates, and I could be wrong on this, I may ask him for a more accurate figure, I reckon we could cut the American budget in half and still fund everything. There's that amount of waste. In fact, it may go 70%. There's that amount of waste and duplication of jobs. It's just not funny. Then we posted, did you know the eugenics program, which was actually operating in England and Wales in the early 1900s, that the birth rate went from 35.3 per thousand in 1871 to 18.3 in 1926. 35.3 to 18.3, a 50% loss of birth rate. That was the start of the eugenics program. Then we did a piece, how can you trust others when many don't trust themselves? Reality is defined by the person, in essence, on what you experience. What is unique in this time period is, and yet we are finding it is a common theme amongst our group of shared experiences. What is real to you is not always real to others. But you should never define your own experiences by others. That is externalizing when your truth is internal. Now, some things can be investigated and proof garnered, but most of this war is largely providing no external proof. And it takes an inner knowing and trust to make sense of the limitations of our five senses in here. Now, some have more senses, and those are the ones who see for real. We are the sin eaters. We swallowed the poison, and we are now providing the antidote. And it's up to us all to do that to the best of our abilities. And the final song perhaps can be, that was from the original. The song that we originally had was about Live and Let Die in Civil War. People giving their badges and guns away and laying down symbols of oppression and approaching heaven's door, not for death, but going through the astral heaven's door onto the mental planes. And a step up of your own progression. The object is for us all to knock on that door and burst through, and another of humanity's souls lights up like a beacon. This is what they have really blocked the dark forces for so long. The door awaits and the choice is yours. Heaven is not a 1 and 2 choice when you get when you die. It is an inner state of being when you achieve your own bliss and also inner peace. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. We're still into April. There was a lot going on in the Middle East, and still is, particularly in Yemen. And we're pleased that THI has got some Yemen members now, and it's going global. So we did a backstory of what is real that is going on in the Middle East that the portal people clowns will not tell you. And the backstory about Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia and Yemen is all about shipping lanes, and hence the principality created known as Tel Aviv due to the port of Jaffa. Now, Khomeini of Iran, Netanyahu of Israel, Bush, America and the Saudi prince were all in on a deal to export cheap oil out of Iran. Khomeini was a trustee of the trust also previously. Those four between them created the conditions where they could pilfer cheap, or in some cases free, oil out of Iraq and Iran. But to create those conditions, you need to have an enemy and then a subsequent military presence in the area to pull that off. Iraq was set up via alleged invasion of Kuwait, remember, which is, of course, another shipping port and route out for the shipping of the oil. That led to Gulf War I and the presence established. Now, prior to that, in 1984, Iran was set up as the future boogeyman, with the same four countries participating, including Iran, or Khomeini at the very least. And Iran was sold nuclear weapons in 1984 by which country? Israel. Yes, for those new, you heard that right. Iran has had nuclear weapons since 1984. They're not building anything. They already have them, and Israel sold them in 1984. So you have all the rhetoric and fear given to the Jewish people of Iran, etc., is going to attack us and are close to building nuclear weapons to bomb us, when their leaders in Israel gave the so-called enemy nuclear weapons to begin with 35 years ago. So Iran doesn't have to build any nuclear weapons. Israel gave them. And it's all part of the illusion game, you see, and why you cannot point fingers at countries. It's not the countries per se, it is the programs and the puppet lackeys behind it. So these four groups divvy up the oil flow and then take over the ports to export it out. America's portion goes to Houston, Texas, which also involves Aramco, which later got attacked, no surprise, in Saudi Arabia. These groups, as I said, are getting cheap oil at $25 a barrel or less. Sometimes for free. Was the we posted a video of them barrels being stolen and put on the back of bikes and then going across the border, and then they sell it at double the value or more. What is the real cost of producing oil? Well, once the initial cost of setting up a pump is made, which is usually around $10 million, the operating cost to produce a barrel of oil is less than $1 for a barrel of oil. And yet they're raping countries and the people with ridiculous profit margins for something that is now 100 years out-of-date technology. The Gaza Strip, also a coastal poor place, was annexed because it has massive gas fields underneath it also, so these same clowns can control that. The Golan Heights, which in 2015 was found to have massive gas and oil fields, and the main company there is called Genie Oil. Oh dear, Genie and gins. And the head guy is called Howard Jonas. Born in New York, born to Jewish parents. Oh dear. So how was Howard Jonas set up in the Golan Heights in Syria? Well, he was granted exclusive oil and gas exploration rights in the southern part of the Golan Heights by the Netanyahu government. Can you see the links now? Of course, neglecting the fact that it is sovereign territory and it doesn't belong to Israel. But we are told we have to overlook that fact because Israel is our friend. Try telling that to the 34 killed and 174 wounded Americans on the USS Liberty. Jonas is also the head man of the group IDT Media, and of the 5,000 employees working there, 25 to 40% are Jewish. Bearing in mind the demographics for America, the Jewish people make up 2%. It's all about keeping it in-house, you see. All about the deals. And let's keep it all in-house. House spelt with a capital H, which is where the term Israel came from. Not the country, the House of Israel. Nothing to do with any countries. That wasn't founded until 1947. The senator running for office, Kirsten Gillibrand family, we exposed as having links to NXIVM. Her father, Doug Rudnick, came to work as a consultant for NXIVM. He was fired, they sued him, and they had to pay him $100,000. Former NXIVM employee Frank Pilato told Big League Politics her father's wife, her stepmother, was also a member of NXIVM. Gillibrand was running for president, if I'm not mistaken. Her father Doug got her into the cult, and Gillibrand's father got Gillibrand's future stepmother also into the cult. Now Doug left the cult because he was sued. Claire Bronfman, after her father was sued, donated money to Gillibrand, and Gillibrand accepted it. Nor is it a coincidence that Lynn de Rothschild is on the board of the Bronfman Rothschild's company, considering that she has been linked to quite a number of child abuse conspiracies in the last few years. Excuse me. Both the Rothschilds and the Bronfmans, incidentally, have close ties to John McCain, or did, and Hillary Clinton. Now you know why they wanted Hillary as president, as NXIVM would never have come to light, except THI, because we put it out 6 months before the media. Then we did a piece on the looking glass technology, and it's a mixture of Orion and Sirius cube technology, and this is why there is the black cubes located everywhere, the Mecca being the prime one, and the water monument of One World Trade Center also. Other black cubes dotted around New York, and it is reptilian mind control technology. Vril. Now, the reference to black cubes would not be the last this year also. It was based on the old golden sun disk of Mu technology. And yes, it is known as a remote viewing machine and can predict the future. But if we all understood time and space properly, and our science doesn't, then we too can predict the future or charter a different path. What is the future? Well, everything that is in front of you. As you walk forward, you are heading into the future. Look behind you or walk back, it's in the past. Standing still is not in the now either, as you are always in motion. Motion is time and space. And yet can be argued it's neither also. That takes a little bit to get your head around. So you are always moving, you just don't perceive it that way. And we often hear of changes in timelines, and many think some outside forces can manipulate it or change it, which can be done with certain technology, and on those levels it can also be done by people whose abilities have been switched on to counteract it. But on a more basic level of changing the timelines is done on a daily basis when proper thinking is applied. As is the case on this planet in too many aspects, we often forget or fail to recognise our own input into changing timelines. And I can hear people now thinking, what's he saying? Here we go, Thomas is now telling us we can change timelines. Oh my God, now I'll have to learn something else. Does this guy ever stop? Well, once you end your own limitation program of little me, you will realise you are more than just a label. So how does it work? Well, humanity, unfortunately, is a creature of habit. If you analyse your day, you will see the repeat patterns. So because we repeat so many patterns, those who are using AI capabilities can predict with good measure the exact path you are charting, and so can interject in your life path on a day-to-day basis. So what do I mean by that? Well, say one particular person is creating an issue to the system and they are aware of the day-to-day patterns. They can install another person in that pattern to intervene in a certain way. That changes your timeline for their desired result. The group known as the Watchers does this far more than people realise, and yes, can often and has been used for sinister plans, resulting in people dying due to an accident, which is a pre-planned accident, a bit like throwing fridges off wagons in front of Kim's car. Pre-planned. So you get up in the morning and you do a set of tasks, then head out to work, often going the same route. You may often see the same cars or the same people because they're all on the same timeline as you. But what if you took a different route to work? Suddenly you will not see the same cars or the same people as you went on a different path. And what you've just done is you've just changed the timeline. Your interaction with different people will change their timeline. Instead of walking in a straight line on the sidewalk, they may have to move across as now you are in their timeline. A small sidestep to avoid you has changed their day and their future. That person who bumped into you along the road, and when you stop and think and not turned around and said, "Wells to Fargo," that person may have been sent to change your timeline. Because later that day, you may have been involved in an accident that may have ended your life, or someone else that is playing a role in a future timeline event. You see, we are capable of so much more when we put our minds to things. This may be seen as a small ripple in the pond, but if everyone created a ripple, it becomes a tsunami, and this is what we've been trying to get across. Be the change, not wait for it, but you never know what one change of habit can bring in the future. A change of your timeline that leads to a chance meeting that may lead to a new job, new partner, or prevent a predicted outcome of your own life. Then we did a piece, slightly humorous, of what would happen if Jesus returns now and lands in America, particularly in Washington, D.C. What would unfold? Well, providing he wasn't shot on the spot by gun-toting agents, the DC security services would arrest him for trespassing. Then he would be snatched up by ICE as an illegal immigrant because he can't produce any ID papers. The MIC, Military Industrial Complex, will demand an interrogation into how he arrived here, what was his mode of travel, and can they back-engineer or weaponize it. The FAA will inquire, does he have a pilot's license? The IRS will demand a hearing and file papers for 2,000 years of back taxes. The DoD will declare him a terrorist and potential jihadist. Jewish people will cry fake news, and this is not the real Messiah, and instruct Trump to deport him to Jerusalem, order a trial, and ask him does he like nails and wood. The Vatican will go along with the Jewish, same group as why. American people will demand he be deported from whence he came, as all illegal immigrants should be thrown out. Portal people will demand an interview to ask him to retract his past statements, asking him was Mary a prostitute and did he sleep with anyone else other than Mary. The alt media will ask, is he a QAnon? Democrats will demand an investigation into does he have any connections to the Russians. Liberals would demand compensation for him not taking their sins away, and half the planet will down tools because their own personal saviour has arrived. Still think it's a good idea to return here? I think not. Word on the street. There was a high-level meeting by the Rothschilds over the weekend discussing several things we heard. The outcome of that, which has yet to be confirmed, I want to make clear, is that the Rothschilds family is backing out and stepping down altogether. That is in part still true. Not entirely, but sufficiently. If confirmed, it will have a major effect and shift globally, several implications that can be of benefit to humanity, and a later comment of carrots for jackasses pretty much confirmed that piece in some ways. Israel's moon mission went badly wrong in April, described as a technical glitch. Glitch, oh dear. That was shot down by the Space Fleet, and not the Alliance or the SSP either. It was carrying cargo not deemed suitable, and any other attempts of that nature will be met with the same response. There was also a video of a wheel-looking craft seen on videos, and I reported it is a real depiction of a certain space station platform that is largely benevolent, whether that picture was faked or not. Military people, all top brass, had a meeting in Miami in late April to discuss matters, and the outcome of that was all put a fund together of $100,000 and into a team to take out Kim and the team again. Nice work, chaps. Just because you're too stupid to see beyond your own pallets of dinars and billionaire dreams that has become a nightmare doesn't mean you blame the wrong people for your own stupidity. On the Monday, a call was made directly to Kim on a rarely used line that came directly from the Pentagon, much to their surprise anyway. And certain things were discussed about their lack of funding and delays for the RV. Kim again explained it wasn't happening, and the way she says it, I promise you, it's not happening, and offered an alternate choice with the conditions that you have to defend America, not the US. Big difference. Its interests and the people against all others. No deals will be made with connections to Rothschilds or Chinese elders. Should they go ahead, the Pentagon itself will be much better off, as they would no longer have to give half of their budget to the Chinese elders or Rothschilds slush funds, and we requested guarantees of such. At which point the Pentagon called in a top economist to explain whether the RV could work. The response after considering it all was, it's not possible. There are no quotas to support it, the economist stated, just like we've been telling all and sundry for years. The Pentagon's response was, so we've been lied to then. Oops. Hi all and welcome back. We're going to continue with April, and I'm hoping to get into a bit of May. I realise we've run over time, but well, the normal 3 hours anyway. But these, we've probably got another 3/4 of an hour to go. Let's see how far we get. In April, we exposed a group that was unknown or unheard of to many Americans, called FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and it's a bureau of the United States Department of the Treasury that collects and analyzes information about financial transactions in order, it is said, to combat domestic and international money laundering, terrorist financing, and other financial crimes. Well, it was subsequently found that they weren't the only one that was monitoring that. Was the CIA, the NSA, the Google, and a load of others were all doing the same thing. Why? Because they were doing the same things that they were alleging to combat: money laundering, terrorist financing, and other financial crimes. So what was found out by the trust team was they were siphoning billions out of the banking system using the FBI under the guise of compliance. But they were really stealing funds for Hillary Clinton. And this shows that they were involved in what was known in the former banking levels of 3 through 6. And as each got neutered, they switched to other levels and other servers, and eventually they ran out of them. Sizzle, sizzle. And back in April, it was said this is why Anne is no longer prevalent. For those new, Hillary is Anne, as in Android. And we cut off their supply with the restructuring of the banking system and their levels of interaction with it. And actions were taken, and is now confirmed, FinCEN is now down permanently. Clinton thought FinCEN was their own personal pocketbook. 30 billion was recovered, and only 12 billion had no apparent source or destination. They even tried to steal hundreds of millions going to the Veteran Aid Foundation. But it was later found out that the VA is an agency-based front to collect funds for their black projects. Oops. We read this recently. Again, Colonel Edward Mandell House to Woodrow Wilson. House, originally from Texas, was known as the Colonel, and yet never did any military service. Moved to New York in 1902, where he is a member of the Alpha Delta Phi fraternity. Look closely into them and you will see the theme of From Russia with Love. And he said, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property, that's you and your children, in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda that will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Collateral. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattels, property, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operating of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading certificate to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure our plans, and if by accident one or two should figure it out, we have it in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, it is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debts to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations, and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office presidency of our dummy corporation, USA, to foment this plot against America. So again, for people new, if you think you're voting for the government, you're wrong. You're voting for a dummy corporation known as the USA. USA is not America. Never was, never will be, or shouldn't be. The ancestors, next piece, the ancestors of the people who built Stonehenge, it was revealed this year, travelled west across the Mediterranean before reaching Britain, a study has shown. Researchers in London compared DNA extracted from Neolithic human remains in Britain with that of people alive in the same time in Europe. The Neolithic inhabitants appeared to have travelled from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, which borders Russia, to Iberia before winding their way north. They reached Britain in about 4000 BC, and the migration to Britain was just one part of a general massive expansion of people out of Anatolia in 6000 BC that introduced farming to Europe. Before that, Europe was populated by small travelling groups which hunted animals and gathered wild plants and shellfish. And one group of early farmers followed the river Danube up into Central Europe, but another group travelled west across the Mediterranean. DNA reveals the Neolithic Britons were largely descendants from groups who took the Mediterranean route, either hugging the coast or hopping from island to island on boats. and it now appears that the Rus, Slavonic, Aryan peoples built Stonehenge. Oops. I remember this piece. This was a laugh. We'd done an earlier piece that day about flying, and I decided to do a humorous piece of things we do to ourselves and don't think enough. And there's much more in life, more annoying, terrifying, invasion of privacy, feelings of being uncomfortable, treated like cattle, than flying on an airplane these days. And it's also a warning of how quickly we let our freedom slide in the name of national security, which is a load of bollocks, which, like the term conspiracy theory, is a misnomer. You have drastic differences in prices for the same seats, substandard food and water, which you now have to pay for. It was once part of the deal. You arrive at the airport and try to avoid excessive parking fees, so you try and drop off luggage and passengers near the gate, only to be met by Segway Nazis telling you to move along before you have a chance to unload or say goodbye to victims who are travelling. You then enter the terminal, nice name that for people who are frightened of flying, and you quickly try and search for your flight on a screen to see if it's on time, delayed, or even overbooked. Check in, where you wait 15 to 45 minutes to then be called up to check bags, where the art of confusion reigns as different airlines have different allowances and payments for baggage, which used to be part of the deal. Then you are subject to humorless drone people. They then ask you stupid questions like, do you have a bomb? And anything other than a stern no is flagged further down the line. Then comes the weighing of bags. Your bag is 8 ounces overweight. That'll be $90, thank you. Okay, I'll empty some out. Then the eyes of the server burns the back of your head as they stand over you like a bulldog chewing a wasp. You proceed to the gate, where you endure more lines and eventually reach another stern-looking Nazi saying, "See papers, please." Your passport or ID is handed over, then follows frequent looks at the ID and your face, making you feel like some sort of a terrorist, and then it's stamped and on you go into another line, where you are then sniffed at by bomb and drug dogs, and the feeling of being uncomfortable grows, and heaven forbid there are people with burqas on in the queue. Everyone watches them like a hawk, and just when you think you've had enough, no, the next stage of your torture begins. Please take off your shoes, belts, all jewellery, wallets, take out your phone, laptops, place in a separate bins so we can view and invade all your private stuff. Then the checklist comes in. Does my arse and vag itching cream pass the criteria? Remember now, no clear bottles, no food and no water bottles allowed. At this point you're thinking, why did I bring all this stuff and why am I going on this flight? And off all your different items go into the spy machine. Then some Nazi tells you to proceed through to the radiation machine, which you must insert yourself into, and genitals and boobs come alive on the pervert screen. I'm through at last, you think. No, some eagle-eyed Nazi decides to flag you down and now wants to fondle you all over, whilst you're thinking, is that person male or female? You've all seen them. Then you collect all your belongings from several bins, back on with your shoes, coats, belts and jewellery, and you head off for your flight finally after 2 hours, only to arrive at another waiting station to be called for your flight. Then you are herded onto the flight in batches, and onto the flight you go, only to be greeted by two flight attendants who have doused themselves in some nostril-burning cologne that lingers for the next half hour, until they march up and down to sell you a pile of unwanted crap from a magazine or encourage you to watch or listen to their in-flight entertainment, but you must buy their headphones. Several hours later, you arrive and end up the furthest part of the airport, show passports again, before walking another half mile or so to collect your luggage, some of which arrives, some that doesn't. Then a scramble to get out of the airport, and the next stage is snake oil fear porn salesman selling you insurance and upgrades for a hire car. Another hour has passed and you are on your way to your destination, dreading the return. All in the name of so-called safety and national security. And we tolerate this shit? The simple answer is don't fly. They will soon change all this shit, drop prices and the inconvenience of it all if no one flies. In a week where the ritual of fire starts, which is a tribute to Baal, which runs through to May the 1st, and Baal Tain Day, or Bel, which means Baal, and ritual sacrifice. Tain means to hold or bind. So you are bound to Baal Day. All dress up now, look like prats and dance around the maypole. Not. 2 satellites were caught interfering with the quantum system in April, was destroyed, and we warned them of the consequences of interfering with the system and the actions that would follow. Bye. The reason for the reporting of internet outages globally is as follows. Certain servers get fried for interfering in due process, then they use other servers designated for different specific purposes to stay ahead of the game, hence outages. The Rothschilds organised another fire sale, having sold all their stocks previously, a couple of months previous, at Christie's in April, and is another sign of their struggle and another sign of their collapsing empire that would continue throughout the year. Trump, via an executive order, has transferred all security clearance work now to the Pentagon, and essentially sets the stage for the renamed Defense Security Service to take over the background investigations for the entire federal community, with a specific timeline given to implement it. This is potentially bigger than you may think at this stage. Did you know the construction of the pentagram, better known as the Pentagon, which started in 1941 on September the 11th? 50 years to the day, George Herbert Walker Bush did this "when we are successful with the New World Order" speech, and 10 years later on the same day came the Twin Towers. Joachim and Boaz became Osiris. Did you know the business model of a cooperative has a survival rate of over 80% compared to 44% and the failing corporate model? There was a conversation that came up in the chat in response to a guest Alan of Circle of White Light had on his show that particular week in late April. And it was a yoga expert, and she's a good one from all accounts. But a question was raised on the subject about shielding before participating in that practice. And predictably, with any expert on any subject, if that information is not in their field, they go defensive on it, like it's their fault for not knowing. And this is a common theme for some in the alt media. They react badly to the information. And yet, why is it a reflection of them or you if you don't know things? You know, there's lots of things we don't know. It's not Nobody can possibly know everything on every single subject. The system made sure of that. So let's try and be less harsh on ourselves for not knowing things. Now, yoga involves in pulling in energy streams from the field all around us. The great unseen energy we cannot see, smell, hear or touch, or most can't anyway. But with frequencies heightened, you can sense and eventually feel the field, which is a compressed version of the energy around you. Now, the warning I've given is that if you don't shield and you're opening the fields, you're allowing entities to come in and is a potential host possession. Again, coming from the New Age field. They knew, we didn't. Agent Orange was used by the US military in Vietnam, Laos and Cambodia. It was developed by Arthur W. Golston. Did you know Arthur was born in New York and born to Jewish parents? Mike Pompeo made a statement in April. What's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat or steal or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment, he said. Tick-tock, Mr. Pompeo. That was an extraordinary start to 2019, yet it was only the first 4 months. But in times of thinking not much is happening, perhaps that was a nice reminder.